Wait, welcome back to the X Podcast. We got a longtime friend returning to join us today.
Woo.
Zachary
Brown.
Zach Brown Band is back with us today.
Yes.
Tim is glowing because he just got to go to paradise.
Paradise.
Took him to paradise. Well, actually, let me explain that. We just got back from Atlanta. Got to explore the city.
ATL.
And he has the golden vibes from the Golden City.
Okay. Is it called the Golden City?
No, he makes all this crap up.
But he's very muted about it. It was very funny in Atlanta. We'd go and I'd be like, yeah. And I was like, yes, it's very functionally fun right now. And I was like, no, but you have music. Yes, in that exact face.
I don't believe half of what he says.
Yeah. So,
what's the quote about him that you say?
Oh, my lips are moving.
If his lips are moving, you know.
He tells people this, and then I speak on Sundays. They're left to discern.
People know to figure out half of what's just true.
Right.
Actually, the part that when he reads from scripture is true, all the rest is suspect.
The rest is sus. I did just have a meeting with someone that we're partnering with for Christmas, and I had that shirt from Zara that says talgimages or whatever, the word on it.
Wait, the what?
You know, the talgimages, that one weird word. You always say it every time I wear it. It's like your girl dad thing.
Taj Mahal.
It says, so it's just a bunch of weird letters, and that makes up a word. You say something every time I wear it.
But it's not a real word.
I don't know what it is. But the lady asked me what it was. And so I went into this whole diatribe about how there was an Arabian tribe from the 1830s and blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the day, an angel appeared. These missionaries came over. They gave their life to Jesus. And the word forgot it was this word. And I said it. And she was like, that is literally the most incredible story. That's amazing.
Built a whole story and lied to her or what?
I said, none of that's real. I said, I bought her from Zara. I have no idea what it means. And she laughed for about 5 minutes. It was hilarious. And she goes, how did you do that? Have you told this story before? I said, honestly, it's scary. I have no idea how I did that. It just came out. So I don't know if I'm proving your point right now.
You're a pathological liar.
Look at how tan you look.
He probably lied no less than 15 times while we were gone over the weekend.
True.
No, it's absolutely true. He was introducing his ex.
Okay.
He was introducing, and I got to meet his ex-girlfriend.
Oh,
ex-fiance.
That's not true.
You guys weren't engaged?
No.
I thought you were engaged at one point.
Nope.
Okay, sorry, Cody, if you watch this or listen to it, I apologize. I didn't know you guys weren't engaged. His ex-girlfriend was there, and that was fun, great to meet her. And he literally would go around to everybody in the church, and he just made up stories about her. Yeah. All complete lies. Just complete lies. And he would tell people, and they were like, oh, really? Really? And then he would just, oh, no, I'm just kidding. So he lies, and then he backs it up with I'm just kidding. But he did that probably at least 15 times. Wow. I'm not joking. So he's a pathological liar, but he means well.
But he means well.
So
we love you.
Yeah.
We love you.
So anyways, it was a fun weekend in Atlanta, and quick weekend. Quick weekend.
Okay.
Stroke. Yeah, but it was fun.
You just said you had a stroke?
It was fun. Yes. How are you 1 to 10? How's your soul?
Well, after I went to Atlanta, I have to be an 11.
Yeah, you're an 11.
I have to be an 11.
You're
so
11.
I'm good. I feel well. I feel good.
Screaming hot Atlanta the whole time you were there.
No.
And
it wasn't hot at all. It was actually,
and you just kept going into the rap song. You learned that it was T.I. City. See, this Joel Leggett.
Okay, I thought you were gonna keep lying.
No.
Again, he was lying. Again, I'm just pointing. It's so easy to point out when you lie because your lips are moving.
Yeah. So, but you got to go to some coffee shops. Got to take you around Piedmont Park. Got to go to some cool restaurants all around Buckhead, West Side, Midtown. Got to tour Passion's facility.
Yeah, it was cool.
Fun weekend.
It was great.
Fun weekend. Got to be with some ministry friends, Joel, and support them. Church plant in Lawrenceville.
Yeah.
And what did you do this weekend?
I watched the Canal Winchester Indians. Shout out. C-Dub. See what? Anyways,
whoa.
We defeated Big Walnut in high school football.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Big Walnut.
They did have one loss. I thought they were undefeated. They did have one loss.
Oh.
But it moved us way up in the rankings and got a better seed for the playoffs. And
you mean it moves you to fourth place?
No.
Was it?
Ninth place.
Oh.
So we were going to finish last in the region, but now we're
This is the high school team?
Next to last.
Yeah.
So now you're next to last. And so
Next
that
to
you
last.
are making the playoffs now, right?
We are making the playoffs, which is really cool.
All right.
I got to hang out with some friends on Saturday. I played pickleball for the first time.
You did?
On Saturday.
You're a pickle.
At the Exco hang. No, I'm not a pickle. I
Cody likes pickles.
sucked so hard. It was not good. It was.
You were bad?
Yeah, I was bad.
Are you serious?
Wait,
Okay.
you got to play. This is your first time playing pickleball?
Yeah.
This is my first time playing pickleball. Tucker brought his portable court, and we drew chalk lines for the Exco hang. And
You were bad.
I played against Tucker and Anna, and I forget who I was with, but I beat them the first game.
Well,
and I felt like I
Who'd you
got.
play with?
it didn't.
I forget who the person I was playing with, but the second time I was playing against Jordan Grubb and Anna, and I was playing with Kevin, Pryor's Lexi's boyfriend, and we got destroyed.
So you're not good at pickleball.
Well, I don't know if I'm not good. I was not good in those 3 games. So
Yeah.
the stats are not.
Was Tucker
doing
getting
well.
frustrated at you?
No,
Oh, he was excited.
He was playing against you. Oh, he loved playing.
Yeah. Oh, he loved it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He did say that you two like to debate all the calls though, if the ball's on the line or not on the line.
Well, so there's this. There's this thing where if it goes out on your side, where you have better visibility, you make the call. So multiple times on our side, I'm literally staring at the line. I see it go 3 feet past it, and because it looks
3 feet.
and because they're over there and they can't see it as well, I'm on
Looks
the
like it's
call.
in.
It's out. They're like, "Oh, the line is in." I'm like, "You're correct," but it was nowhere near the line. And they're like, "Oh, you always say that was on your side." I'm like, "You can't see it. You told us to call our sides."
Wait, we're gonna set up cameras next time on
Yes,
both
we need
sides,
to.
and then we can just go back and watch the
But
film in slow motion.
I will
That
say
way we
this.
can-
Pickleball is so fun.
It is
and I
amazing.
get why people play it, and I want to keep playing it so I can get better because I'm competitive. So
It is so fun.
It's fun.
This past week, don't know when this will come out, but
Probably in 2 weeks.
101st Airborne unit has been deployed to within a few miles of
see,
Ukraine,
you said that, and you said that the other day, and I had not even read that.
which
Yeah,
is fascinating.
He
That's huge.
he gets private news.
I get private
White
news.
House.
Yeah, this is like you during right before Fort.
We're not sure if it's correct.
Um,
but
It's this is a big deal. It's the first time that they've been deployed in
That's
Europe since
crazy.
World War II.
Too, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
really big deal. A lot of escalation is, Putin's floating around allegations of dirty bombs in Ukraine, which most analysts think is a pretext for his own escalation, and just a lot going on in the world. But we have been talking about for a while, diving into the whole non-controversial.
or something happened
What else happened?
in regards to this week.
Yeah,
Well, this
it did.
week,
It
Something
did.
did happen. That's
yeah.
what we were thinking about.
Yeah, well, we've been for a while internally. We've been talking about the whole concept of student loan forgiveness, and it was one of the big talking points of President Biden. And then it happened. And of
First
course,
campaign.
this week,
First campaign. Now he's.
that's what I'm talking about. And then now it's been That's actually been.
You didn't say that. That's why I was saying it.
It was one of the big talking points when he was. Yes.
And campaigning. That was
Yes, I think the context is
He hasn't
assumed.
been talking about it the last 2 years, but during the campaign, he said that's what he was going to do, and so then he started doing it.
Right. The context that I think was assumed was that was one of his big talking points.
Yeah.
And then now that he has put it forward, it has been blocked in one of the courts, and I think probably will end up passing through. It seems like.
Yeah.
But
You mean you think it's going to happen?
yes,
So they blocked it just
Yes.
days before it was set to go live,
yes.
which was Sunday, right? This Sunday? This coming Sunday or last Sunday?
No, it went live last Sunday.
It was supposed to go like they could start processing releasing it last Sunday. Is
You
that
could
correct?
start
But then it was
applying for it last Sunday.
okay.
I don't know if
I
they.
thought you could apply before that. No.
No. The form just dropped. The application.
How do you know this so well?
Because I'm planning on taking advantage.
Oh, okay. So that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons.
Just
Wait, did we even say what it was? Student debt?
Student
debt forgiveness.
student loan
Yeah.
forgiveness.
Okay, cool.
Yep, student loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of debate around that. There's a lot of debate around the moment we're in economically. There's an inflationary debate around that. There is a fairness debate around that. There is a language and accuracy debate around even the thought of forgiveness. But as prominent guest today, I just want to let you kind of kick off some of what were your initial thoughts when you heard that this was actually going to happen from a personal level and maybe a political level.
Okay, so on a personal level, this is something that I have been kind of watching for. This has been talked about for a long time, and so to see it actually come to fruition was something that I feel like there's been so many moments this year. Okay, is that actually going to happen?
Yeah.
So to see it actually come to fruition, at first I was like, oh wow, I can't believe this is actually a thing. It's actually happening. But then after kind of getting past that shock, I became excited because for me and for my wife, student debt is one of the things that we've had to wrestle through and work with, and it's been a big anchor kind of around our necks for a long time, and so we were excited about the possibility of having some of that relieved, and having some of that come off our necks. I think on a political level, it definitely was a campaign promise.
So that would be that would be a game changer for you personally.
Oh, 100%.
And what are the specifics that they're covering? As far I know, there's like a Pell Grant number, and then there's
So if you got Pell Grant, that's the one that's
10,000.
20.
20.
20.
If you just have regular student loans, it's up to 10,000. Pell Grant is like what you get if you like really qualify.
And
for
it's based on the
student loans.
income.
Yes.
And you have to be under a certain amount of income, household income, in order to receive that.
To receive the Pell Grant. And so if you have that, then you could qualify for up to $20,000
And that would
in
be
student debt forgiveness.
each. Like that'd be per person.
Yeah,
Not like if you're married in the household, that would be
Correct.
potentially 20 for you, 20 for your wife if she has it. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes. And then they also loosened some of the restrictions around being able to apply for some of the loan forgiveness options. Like, for example, the most common one is the public service loan forgiveness opportunity, which is for people who work for nonprofits, who work in kind of that sector of the market. And that program has notoriously been incredibly difficult to make qualifying payments on and do different things like that. And they kind of loosen some of those restrictions as well for people to be able to qualify for that program. So
Okay. So and politically, how do you?
I mean, so politically, this is
So I mean, I think everybody's aware of this, but typically, the concept of student loan forgiveness is more of something that is promoted and celebrated on the left and discouraged on the right. So this is it's controversial, kind of spicy topic, depending on which side you land.
Yeah.
But then also the personal factor.
Well,
I feel like it's always.
I've also found that if you're one of the ones that has student debt, I have found you don't care politically, you'll throw it out the window.
That's what I was saying. The personal factor is wild.
Because, like we've had one of our, I don't want to say, but we've had a former co-host who was on here who was always excited at the potential of student debt forgiveness, even if he fell on a conservative side, politically. Like, it's one of those things that's like, from a political perspective, you can go, man, I don't agree with that. But if you need it, you're like, oh, goodness. You know what I mean? So I think people can feel conflicted.
Yeah, when you're personally
If it's a
involved,
political thing.
that can change it.
Or you got different political ideas when it comes to finances, and yet still be like really glad and grateful, but maybe conflicted.
Yeah, I think I just want to say that I'm sharing kind of my personal, I don't want to say joy, but like relief or excitement about the program. I think if I were to nuance out my thoughts and feelings on it, I think what you would discover is there is some, I don't know, not some consternation, but there's definitely a realization of, just because I'm having these debts forgiven, I understand that cost doesn't just, like, it's not just free money. It's not, it's going somewhere. I think I understand, like, logically I
What some people say is it's just your kids that you get to pay for it.
Potentially. Maybe.
I mean, we just hand down the debt to the next generation.
We've been doing that. We've been doing that for a lot of generations.
Yes, we have been.
We've been doing that for,
and it just keeps climbing. You can go to the national debt clock and you can just watch it. Was at 30-some trillion, 31-some trillion, and it still climbs.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a lot of generations.
We've been doing that for a long time.
So again, if I were to nuance out exactly how I feel about it, I think you would see some of that. But yes, I'm definitely excited for it. On a political level, I mean, this is something that the Democrats have been talking about for a long time. So it's not new. Biden's campaign promise was not a new one. It's something they've been talking about for a long time. And so to see it come to fruition again, there was a little bit of a shock factor. Like, oh my gosh, like, it actually is. We can debate on the timing.
You voted for who?
What?
Yeah.
Unspoken?
You don't have to answer that. Anyways,
no.
I think what's interesting to me, regardless on, politically how you look at this, because
Yeah.
I think what's interesting I'd love to just remove the political labels with it because, yes, it may not be more a part of a conservative platform to do this. It may people, that are more conservative financially and economically might look at it and go, I think this is a really bad idea financially.
Yeah.
But if we remove all of that, I mean, if it was a Republican that was in there that did this, then the narrative would probably be flipped by everybody that just follows political and party lines. And then all the Republicans would be touting it for some other reasons. And then the Democrats would be upset and saying, this is terrible policy. And I know that's not a real world, but I think you just look at it from a practical standpoint. I think there's still a lot of questions about where does this debt forgiveness go? Like this was money that is loaned out to loaned out to students to pay for their education, which they paid for. So the federal government isn't, if there was a federal loan or whatever, is now on the hook, or you're on the hook through the federal government for that debt, and for them to forgive that debt, which I guess they can. I mean, that's one thing, but it's a couple different sources that I read said, what is the cost of this? There are estimated. I went and pulled this down that there are estimated. What did I see about 43 million borrowers to the federal government through student loan stuff, and to a tune of 1.6 trillion. So that's how much has been borrowed, and then ideally is being paid back when people finish school at whatever interest rate. So the government. I mean, really, it makes sense, I guess, if you have the money, you get to make money and help people in your country get to a higher level of education. And I think a lot of questions surrounding, well, what do we lose by doing that? And a couple different sources I saw one said it could end up costing over a 30-year span about $400 billion of what they would lose. Another one that I saw said that is a very low estimate. There's other parts of this program that it could equal as high as $1 trillion. That could be basically income that's probably used toward the budget that would be lost maybe over a span of...
Yeah, there's a lot of inflationary debate because, I mean, some people are saying that the money that people would be paying towards this, it would also be released into the economy for them to actually spend again, for them to buy cars.
Sure.
Of course, the counterbalance to that is, number one, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, student loan payments have been on hold for
a while,
for at least for another year. Second of all, the payments that people are making are so, I mean, it may not feel like this depending on the socioeconomic place you're in, but can be so low that it's almost like a drop in the bucket when you add year to year to year to year to actually come to that.
Yeah.
But just to bring some reality, to bring some reality to that thought, though, for us, we were exploring buying our first home in 2020, and we had done a ton of work cleaning up, our debt, kind of getting in position to do that. The only thing that felt insurmountable was our student loan debt. It was so high, and that's another topic of conversation. How much colleges charge for debt, because that's a very real thing. But it was so high that it almost prevented us from being able to buy the home that we wanted to step into. And that's just something I think we all have to acknowledge, no matter how you feel about the debt forgiveness thing. I think depending on which generation you're in, I think we have to acknowledge a certain reality that there are people who are looking to maybe buy their first home or step into something that have a debt that is counted against you when you go, and then they're checking your credit, they're checking all this, your debt to income ratios, I mean, all that stuff. And what's interesting, I found even through that process, they didn't take your payment, like what you were currently paying. They have their own formula that they use to calculate how much of that student loan debt counts against your debt to income ratio. They don't take what you're actually paying for it, because what we were paying was actually less than what they were counting against.
They don't look at it just monthly.
Yeah.
They look at how much total debt you'll have.
Yes, and then they calculate like how much this counts against you on a monthly basis when you're coming to it, and it almost prevented us from being able to buy the home that we were in.
For real.
And so, I'm just saying that is a big opportunity. And I'm 32. most people, maybe in an older generation, I'm not picking on older generations, by the way. The financial realities are just different. You might have had an opportunity to step into a home at 25 or 26 or 27, and it's just not there for people who have this crushing amount of student loan debt.
Yeah, no, it's real, and I think it is so tricky because it's the question for a lot of people. And number one, if you're watching this and you're getting to experience the benefits of it, I think my posture is I'm just celebrating with you. That's awesome. I think regardless of where you land philosophically, if the government gives you an opportunity, be wise and leverage it and use whatever you can to maximize your financial place. But philosophically, it is that whole thing of, number one, there's the language debate that it's not really being forgiven, it's being transferred. So there's just being transferred somewhere. Number two, and economists will argue, there's the real validity of what you're saying, and it's that back and forth in the middle of really a recession. Is it wise?
Yeah.
Is the wise thing to just pardon, billions of dollars? And then number three, is this treating the symptom without? It'd be one thing to me if they were saying, okay, look, like, there has been zero fiscal accountability to universities and how much they gouge prices. There has been little discipline or accountability to tuitionary costs. And so there's this whole system that we're going to fix, and we're going to hit reset, and we're going to completely re-examine, reevaluate university life, university costs. But we're going to go ahead in that reset and forgive all this. That'd be one thing. There'd still be debate on that.
Right.
But from everything I'm seeing, it's no, we're going to get rid of that symptom, that current symptom.
Right.
And there's no spoken plan to actually fix the root, which is university costs and university tuition. And economic trends in the past have shown that if the government subsidizes something, people are just going to take advantage of that in the future.
Yep.
So to me, there's a lot of symptoms being treated without a lot of roots.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, to me, the roots are we can talk about any of these subcategories forever, but there's the ridiculous costs of universities. There's the overpressurized thing in society, which I think is not as much post-COVID, which is if you're going to have a life, if you're going to have a career, you have to go to college. And then number three, not to be all Dave Ramsey, but the over-normalization of debt, crushing debt. That to get ahead in life, you have to have crushing debt.
I think all of those are talking points. I don't think it's any one thing.
Yeah.
I think there's other, all the points you made, I think are valid. I think they're, people fall in different sides. I think there's also another political one too, which is,
midterm.
What does it look like? Well, midterm. I was going to say, like, it's one thing to make promises on the campaign trail. It's another thing to use an executive order to do it. Like, we have seen that growing practice for the last, go back, I don't know how many, 8 years or whatever they said, 8 years. I don't remember how many, where it just really
from
started.
Both parties.
From both parties.
Yes.
That have done it. Like it was with President Obama and then President Trump and now President Biden. It just keeps increasing the amount of executive orders, which is, there's a reason why you have checks and balances. There's a reason why there's a legislative branch that is there for the laws and managing, and you have, all these different, is so you don't have one person abusing any power when they're in there. And so, to be able to print and sign a piece of paper and wave a magic wand and all of a sudden, for 43 million people, there's billions of dollars just set free. I think that's kind of worrisome.
Yeah.
Just in general. Like, I don't even know how we run our country that way. That seems really dangerous to me.
Yes.
I agree with what you're saying with the transfers. Like, how do you just make things go away? What is the impact to the federal government? We already have a balance, or say a budget that's not balanced every year. And that's not just with this president, it was previous presidents, and you had the pandemic, it just got worse and worse. But so it just seems like we just keep printing more money. We just keep, increasing our budget, even though we're kind of going further and further in the wrong direction. We just keep, traditionally spending more money. And so you lose revenue into the government for this. When does that hit an impasse? Like, when do we get to a point where there's a break? When do we get to a point where, everything really falls apart. And then we all feel it. And I'm not saying that would be because of this, but all these little things start to add up.
I think I told you, I may have mentioned in one of the podcasts, but it was one of my most fascinating moments in Israel was when our tour guide, who was Jewish, was taking us through the ruins of some ancient civilization. I can't remember. It was where they originally created aqueducts. And he's talking about all these empires. And so it was so fascinating to me. And I remember asking him, well, how did that empire, because they had world domination at that point. They're so powerful. They're so wealthy. They were so innovative. I said, well, how did they come to ruin? And he said, well, in the same way that every empire comes to ruin, through corruption and greed. He said, the same way America will soon. And he said it so tongue-in-cheek. I said, wait, what? And he said, well, you know that no empire in history has ever lasted really more than 300 years.
Yeah.
And he said, to me, it's really fascinating how you Americans think that there's $3 trillion in debt and nothing's going to happen soon. It was just this like, oh, yeah.
Trillion.
Yeah, $3 trillion, yeah.
That.
And I was like, oh. And it was just like one of those like, I don't know, splash of cold water in the face moments of, wow, we really do sleep through this reality that doesn't hit us because we're so used to it, that no nation perpetually is going to be able to live under the crushing weight of that amount of debt and nothing happen. I'm not an alarmist, but I'm just saying it's stuff we got to think about because we just keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And eventually I think that ice is going to crack. It has to.
You would think so?
You would think. Although I wonder, I'm not saying I disagree with this assessment, but to play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
I mean, do we think, this is a topic we've talked about before, the three of us, does globalization play into all this? I mean, nations are so interconnected now. Economies are so interwoven with one another. If America were to default on its debt, okay, or the bill comes due and we can't pay the $31 trillion, I mean, that ripple effect of us being able to not do that is going to affect every other country in the world. It just would.
Well, and we tout the strongest military, so it doesn't matter. We'll just go take over a few nations and take all of their resources and use it to pay our bill.
I'm not saying we're going to do that. But what I'm saying is...
Well, it's kind of like with China. We owe China so much, but China is so dependent on us as well.
Right? Yeah. So
there is an inner-rooted...
Yeah.
So I understand the concern. And at the end of the day, money is money, but it's also, we're talking about numbers on a piece of paper.
Because none of it's real.
Well,
none of it's backed by anything real.
I think it's a very valid point.
Don't tell anybody.
I think it's a very valid point, but the last thing you just said, I think, is kind of the thing of like, it doesn't feel real, but it is real.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of debt.
I think economics, I'm not saying, I know this is oversimplistic, but I mean, the same economics that apply to an individual or a family apply to a business and at some point apply to a nation. When you think to debt to income ratio and you think to, I mean, I don't know. It is very real and it should play in and it should be a concern how much we owe and how in debt we are. And
the national debt calculator just says each citizen is on the hook for a little over $93,000 right now. So all we have to do is give the government $93,000 each, and we can wipe out the debt tomorrow.
You know what's fascinating? I don't know if y'all saw this.
I don't.
I
don't have 93,000 sitting in the bank. I can give.
You mentioned the executive orders. Did y'all see? This is fascinating. For whatever, I don't care what news you watch, if it's Fox or CNN or hopefully none or a combination of them. But props to CNN. I've never seen Fox News fact check President Trump, but did you see CNN just fact check Biden? Like there's an article that hit this morning, CNN, and it was from CNN. Biden fact checked, and he has been in a number of interviews and in a number of speaking appointments, talking in terms of this was voted. We were one vote short, blah, blah, blah. And CNN actually did a whole thing of like, nope, this was executive order. This was not fact checked. He basically gave the implication that Congress had passed it. And I just thought it was interesting. I've never seen that. I've never seen CNN fact check President Biden.
I think
curious.
Okay, real quick around the table, and we talk about maybe some of the sources. Are you for this or not? I can like you and still not be for it. I can be glad you're getting help and not be for it necessarily.
If you had
for or against,
if you had to gun to my head, I would say I'm against it.
All right.
But let me. My asterisk would be if there was a plan attached to it, to fix it going forward. then I might would be more.
Yeah, I wonder how many. Okay, so everybody borrowing money now, are they going to get the same benefit? Everybody that's going into school right now.
Because I mean, really,
Because that's the point that I was just telling my daughter, don't worry about
Right.
student loans or anything, and just you can go to any university you
well,
want.
because I mean, you have the anecdotal. There's exactly what you're saying, which is very real. And then, in fairness, is such a sticky thing to
Right.
even dice through. But you have a lot of people that I'm assuming probably were like, okay, so I worked really hard to go in state and to make these grades and to not have to, or I opted for a trade school, or I did have all this, but I worked my butt off to pay it off.
Yeah.
And wait, now this, or the person who didn't go to college, they're like, okay, so my tax-paying dollars are paying for you to go to school.
so that you can make more money than me.
It is a very weird.
That's-
But then I think we also don't look this deep under the covers of everything else our tax dollars go to.
Can I want to attempt to bring a little bit of nuance into this conversation right now. First of all, so there's two things I want to address. Depending on which side of the aisle you find yourself on and your thought process through this, one refrain I've heard is just, hey, this is something that we're doing to bail out these college students. They don't feel like they're responsible for it. We're not, we're just giving them a handout, all these different things. Can I just say, and I'm saying this as someone who's going to be taking advantage of what the government's doing. I understand that back in the day, I signed my name on a piece of paper that said I will repay this money. And so I think cognitively, I think more people than what you realize understand that it is our responsibility to pay back the debt. And if the government wasn't doing this, we'd have to find a way to pay it back
I believe that.
eventually.
Yeah.
And so I think that I think you guys do, but I think there can be a perception that the people who are asking for this are just either lazy or entitled.
Right.
They don't want to pay for it or all that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of factors that go into someone being able to repay this. I mean, you look at wages. Wages have not grown with the rate of inflation over the last 20 years. I mean, you can look at the data. And so when you have rising costs of college, you have rising inflation costs, and that's historically over the last 20 to 25 years. We're not even talking about the jump that we've just seen in this last year when it comes to being able to repay things. But wages have remained, for the most part, stagnant. How on earth can we expect people to be able to repay back this kinds of money? It doesn't seem realistic to me. Like, something has to give. You either need to do this, or we need to find a way as a society to pay people a wage that would enable them to repay this money on some level. And then that's one nuance. The other nuance I want to bring into it is this. For me, there's so many things. Almost every case of someone who has debt, you got to look. If you could zoom in with a microscope and zoom in and see the factors that led them to even acquiring that debt in the first place. For me, I was in a time period of my life where, yes, I grew up in the pressure of, you got to go to college, you got to get a degree, you got to do this or whatever. And so it's what everyone was doing. Like, I think 85% of my high school graduating class went to at least 1 year of college. And depending on what college you went to, I mean, that's $20,000 of debt that you're acquiring. And through that process, in high school, we did not take a single class on what debt looks like, how to repay debt, what interest, what compounding interest looks like. So there was a lack of education. And you can say, well, where was that on your parents? Well, okay, I do think some parents take ownership and teach their children that, but that's not across the board,
Right.
okay? And so for me, there was even a sense of my parents were just kind of taking care of the college thing. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I'm not throwing my parents under the bus either. They were just doing what they thought was best for me. They were just like, here, you just need to sign this, and college is paid for. And I'm like, okay. Oh, now I'm thousands of dollars in debt now because of that one decision. And so you can say, well, it's your responsibility. You signed it. Well, yes, I did. And I understand, in a court of law, if you're going to bring this up to it, I know I'm going to lose. It's my responsibility. But in so many ways, on some level, what I'm trying to nuance out is that there's a feeling even amongst those who have this debt that, oh, wow, we didn't even realize the impact of what this was going to have on our lives.
Yeah, no, I
later
think
on.
it's good. I think, and that's why I would say I celebrate with anybody that can take advantage of it. Number one. Number two, all of those things, I think it's so holistic. I've said on here, I told my cousin we were doing the education one, I think that some form of Financial Peace University, money management, debt explanation should be a requirement for graduating seniors.
Yeah.
I think it should be your requirement. I think we are in the most debt-saturated, debt-glorifying culture ever, and it's killing us, and this is just one of the branches in which it's killing us. I do think there should be accountability for university price gouging.
Yeah.
But also, it's interesting, I was telling you, I just met with someone from a church in our community, one church, and the young lady I met with, her and her husband are like serial entrepreneurs. Like, she's a freelance writer and an author and kind of fashion guru, and her husband is, just wildly successful. He is like a professional podcaster and film director and all of these things. And she was telling me, and what's crazy is, she goes, I always tell people my husband is the most creative genius that I know. And she's telling me all these things he's on that I just couldn't believe it. I had to go and check him out on Instagram. I was like, this guy
Sounds
is
like we need to get him on our
insane.
podcast.
Yeah, I actually thought that. I was
We
like,
should
we should
ask
bring him on our podcast.
He's a professional.
And she goes, and by the way, like, he went to college for 2 weeks. She was like, so this may sound weird, but we're literally going to tell our kids, hey, if you want to go to college, cool. But literally all of these trades are things he learned that he didn't need.
Yeah, I was going to say that, to your point, you said you were concerned about we're just fixing the symptom but not actually addressing the problem. I mean, in theory, I agree with that, but I also wonder if, hopefully we can learn from our mistakes. And I think when you look at generationally, I'm in the millennial generation. I think a lot of us in that generation have kind of had to struggle through the student debt thing. But then the corner turns to Gen Z. I think even for them, I think about some of the young people who are kind of helping out on staff here and others, they have a completely different mindset already. We see it when it comes to college. Audrey has a completely different mindset probably about going to school.
Well, that's
what,
because of
probably what you guys have done.
Instilled in them about not going into debt and not putting yourself behind to begin life.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I think I'm on the late end
finish.
Gen X and millennial. I think the parents like you that experience the weight of that are now telling the next generation, their kids, there's other ways.
There's other ways. And I think what's crazy is you're seeing this borne out in some ways. Some of the early stats are in with Gen Z. Gen Z currently has their number one profession that they want to step into. Do you know what it is?
Social media, online, YouTube.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
They have such an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
They are into business. Mm-hmm. They're into they want to start something on their own.
Yeah.
And the world's at their fingertips with their phones, and they're finding ways to use that to monetize themselves, to make money off of it, to do different things like that. And so I do think, yes, there are some things with like college universities that we need to address, but I think as a society, we're also, I think, moving away a little bit. There's a trend in this next generation from pursuing that kind of debt.
Mm-hmm. I think
so his original question, gun to your head.
What?
Are you for or against it?
He has to be for it.
Well, I'm for it. I'm going to take advantage.
No, but even if you were to take advantage of it, philosophically, are you for it or against it?
Okay, now imagine you don't have any student debt and they're getting ready to pass this.
And they're getting ready to pass this.
Or let me ask it this way. Hold on. Let's back up this way. You just 3 months ago paid your last payment.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear President Biden saying that he's going to forgive potentially tens of thousands of debt.
This is just the way my mind works, okay? But if this money, I think if you did the math and averaged it out per taxpayer citizen and how much this would add to our taxes per year, an extra $25 a year to our taxes or whatever. To me,
we should all pay for $25 extra to help pay for yours. Your debt. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
That sounds very socialist. That sounds very, we should just transfer it to, so it's not forgiveness to all the rest of the taxpayers.
Okay. You're applying.
That's not a good.
You're applying a really broad label.
You just said it.
Time out. No. I'm going to push back. you're applying a really broad label to how I would view everything in life. I'm just saying on this specific issue, okay, even if I had just paid it off, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, okay? Because
Right.
my sister would probably answer this question very differently than what I would.
Does she have student debt?
She actually paid hers off. And
Well, I think anybody that paid hers off is going to answer
and
differently.
but you asked me to put myself in that mindset, and maybe it's hard to because I'm not actually in that position.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm just telling you, I think that having borne the burden of it, if I have the ability and it's in my power to relieve people of that burden of it, why would I not want to help people?
Definitely.
I'm not saying that.
What if you had to go rob a
play
bank
devil's
to help
advocate.
people?
We
Would it
can
still
play
be good?
devil's advocate and look down the road.
Robin Hood.
I'm not saying I'm not an idealist.
Yeah,
okay?
Robin Hood. If I had to rob a bank, I would help people.
Yeah, if you telescope out, the weird part is, and this is where you have to be holistic and organic in your thinking. This is where you have to look at each section with its own merit.
Yeah.
But it is odd to think that there's something that individuals are personally on the hook for that the government's going to step in, and it's almost like one day would there be like with house gouging right now, like one day is there going to be like a house bailout that the government's going to come in and say, don't worry
like
about your
2008?
mortgages.
2008.
But they didn't bail people out.
They didn't bail people out; they bailed the companies
Went
out.
for they foreclosed.
Yeah.
They bailed automotive companies out. They didn't bail
corporations
people.
out. They didn't
People
bail
went
individuals.
homeless.
That's the weird part.
Went bankrupt.
Or people paying too much for their cars, and I just found out the government's going to pay my car off.
That would be amazing.
I'm not saying. I'm just. It's just interesting.
No, I understand the principle, like played out in large. I think I definitely probably have an issue with the principle in general.
Yeah.
But when you apply it specifically to this issue,
Yeah.
Because aren't there I'm sitting here with two smarter men than I am when it comes to the Bible. But when it comes to this, aren't there references in Scripture to like that as a lender you should not take advantage of the
Israel.
borrowing?
And when in the Old Testament, when Nehemiah was coming back to rebuild the city and they were trying to reestablish as a nation,
Yes.
that he absolutely said that they should not take advantage of their fellow brother.
And then of course I know,
But I don't think
nuanced.
anybody's taking advantage.
I know what you're going for. You want to bring back the year Jubilee.
No.
Every 7 years, debts are forgiven.
Debts are forgiven.
But every seven, we
I know that's nuanced against verses and Proverbs about the borrower is slave to the lender. Like I understand all of that, like on a principle level. But I think as someone who's in the moment, again in my personal situation, it's not hard. It feels like there was a lot of decisions that I made. I understand without full understanding of what I was stepping into.
I think that's all
I
fair.
think that's all.
That's what we understand that.
That to me, I have all grace for that because I don't know anyone who doesn't. We all learn as we go. I mean, all of us can look back in our teenage years, college years, adult years, and say, "Man, I would do that different. Man, I wish someone would have helped guide me more there. Man, I wish someone." We all look back, and so I don't look with judgment towards anyone with college debt.
Yeah.
I think you can, because how many other benefits have we taken advantage of at the cost of taxpayers? Stimulus checks.
We did not get mad.
CARES Act. Like there's a lot of things. So I think whenever the government offers, or I should say, when the president offers a benefit for the people, because that's what he did.
Yeah.
I just think when we say, and this is, I think, the debate, when we say the government is lender, the government wipes it free. We have to understand that the government is just the people.
So that's
We the people. It's the taxpayers. That's how the money comes.
Let me ask you this specific question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think all I'm trying to do is hopefully, if you are in a place where you disagree with this, I understand why you feel that way.
Sure.
And I'm not saying you can't feel that way. You probably, again, there's valid reasons too. But I'm just saying there's people on the other end of this who are really benefiting from it. And I think if you can stretch your imagination beyond just being mad at, we can be frustrated with the government, but I think we've all, like you said, taken advantage of government programs. We've all taken advantage of this on our own level. And the question I would ask back is, okay, if it's not this way, then what is the other solution that you're going to bring to help? 'Cause this is a real problem.
Well, I do think that
I
there
can
will
think
be.
of four
I
or
think of
five.
a bunch of solutions. I do think that there is, and we are seeing now, a course correction. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. What's interesting is when I graduated high school, there wasn't quite the pressure there has been I'd say in the last 10, 20 years, or at least as one of my daughters graduated in this, because I remember when I graduated, it was probably like, at the graduation where they say, hey, this person's going to do this. It was probably 50-50 of people who knew they were going to college versus they weren't sure.
Yeah.
Today it is probably that 80. It's like there is a real pressure. You're in school right now to go, where are you going to school? But and let's be honest, as a nation, we kind of promote and have elevated this idea of higher education. We're constantly competing with nations around the world. We're competing with China. We're competing with this, that we want to have the smartest and the brightest. And, there's this part of developing worlds and what they do, so there's that pressure. We also have businesses that have jumped on the bandwagon to say, if you don't have a piece of paper, we're not even going to look at you.
Right.
Okay. So in almost every field, there are some fields where you need higher education.
Yeah.
There's a disparity. Yeah. There's medical professions. There's other things. There's a disparity in what we pay them, though. So this is the really confusing part, right? Is you can go and like teachers have to be some of our most educated people in our country. Just to teach usually at almost any level full time, you got to have pretty much a master's degree. A bachelor's working towards your master's is almost a requirement
Or some
everywhere.
level of continuing education.
Continuing education, if not more than that, and yet they make very little.
Yes.
Relatively speaking, they don't make a lot coming out of school. There are trades now, which I'm actually glad to see this, but I felt the pain of this. Trades are on the rise significantly. I was just talking to a guy yesterday. We were talking, it was a senior banquet thing for my daughter and his son. They plays football, and we were talking, and I was asking him what his son's going to do, and he said, well, actually, he's looking at a trade of either HVAC or electrical, and he was like, yeah, we know somebody, South Central Power, they just adjusted everybody's rates to keep up with what everybody's paying for these guys who work, poll workers and stuff. That's all right, but they're the people who go climb let me just qualify that. They do the power poles and stuff for that, to the point where now they're making $52 an hour.
Wow.
You can make over $50 an hour after you go through an apprenticeship, be 23 years old. That's before overtime.
That's crazy.
Okay, so I have for years, whenever I talk to young people, I'm like, if they say, I don't know what I want to do with my life afterwards, do you know I've been telling this for years. Even though I'm like, hey, don't tell your parents I tell you this. Don't go to college yet. What? Everyone's going, no, don't go to. Why would you go and start that investment in money going into it, whether it's your parents' money or borrowing it, when you don't know what you want to do? I just think that there is this pressure in our culture that that's what you have to do.
Right.
And I think we're starting to maybe see a turn, maybe because of debt, maybe because of the inequitable wage payments based on people who have 4-year degrees, and they're getting paid this versus someone who goes to a trade school in 6 months and they can make more than that. And so we're also seeing labor is on the rise in demand, and there's not enough people working in labor. Why? Because everybody's getting a college degree. So now people haven't been going into trades, but yet we're still constantly building, because our economy is all about building capitalism and growth, and we're trying to build bigger facilities and all this stuff, but there's no one to do the work. So guess what? They're raising the rates. So electricians, they $70 an hour. Most 4-year degrees come out, you aren't making $70 an hour. Not even close to that. 25, 30.
No.
Versus $70 an hour. And so I think what we've also seen as a trend is that enrollment in universities has been on the decline.
Yeah.
It's seriously been on the decline. And so I wonder if there is going to be, through all of this, a little bit of a course correction. And I wonder what it's going to do to universities. What happens, now this is the big question, what happens when they see enrollment decline dramatically, and you've invested in all your facilities, your campuses, your teachers, the tenured ones that you're paying and all that? What happens when that goes down and you got less income coming in? Do you adjust your entire model, or
Raise your costs.
do you raise your rates even more?
Yep. That's what I wonder.
And
Are they going to bring it down or more?
It's a big question, and I looked up, this was just some interesting stats. Ohio State.
Why did they need
Ohio State
they bring
University.
$12 million a football game?
Ohio State University, interesting, their football program brought in $57 million last year. Now, I don't know all their expenses, but if you look at their previous years, I found this interesting. I think this was 2019-2020 school year. They are, by the way, Ohio State is one of, I think it's either second, if maybe tied for first or second largest department in the country.
They go back and forth with Texas, I think.
But I think they're like, there are no other departments, not even in school, that generate as much revenue and have expense. So I don't want to say it's all, profit, but they, in 2019, 2020, that was their record. It was their record revenue. So the last 3 years have been record revenues, but 2019, 20, they brought in $233.9 million is what they brought in. Now, they did have, and they spent about $215 million.
Mm-hmm.
Still, I mean, they're making, you could look at that, right, just real easy, making about, $18 million profit in that year. Now, there's so much money comes in endowments and all this stuff, and they, spend a lot of money, and there's no fault there. I'm not saying fault. I'm just giving some numbers and stats to understand. And the challenge is, and I understand about private universities, but public universities. Mm-hmm. And, if we as a society want people to go to higher education, I think we need to make it more feasible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we need to solve that problem. Some other stats I found, the average cost of, this was on educationdata.org. You can ask your cousin whether or not it's a valid source to go, but the average cost of college tuition and fees at a public, not private, four-year institutions over the last 20 years has risen 179.2%. Wow. With an annual average increase of 9%.
What's the average tuition?
The average cost of tuition and fees, they say if you average that over 20 years, is an increase of 9% every year for the last 20 years.
What's the average?
What is
one of them I found, they said the average public is $25,000. Yeah, I think that's just for tuition, though. I don't know. It could be tuition and fees, but the average one. So, and this one, I also found this stat kind of interesting. The average cost of tuition and fees at a private four-year institution has risen 124% over the last 20 years for an annual increase of 6.2. So private has actually gone up less than public.
Interesting.
That to me seemed kind of crazy.
But private has they probably charge higher because they have less people attending, less endowments, less
could be.
You think a smaller
But you would think public, is probably somewhat state funded, maybe. I don't know. I mean, there's certain rules they have to abide by for a public.
Okay, so let's switch this question. I, with gun in my head, was leaning against no. You've made some really, really good points. So you would say yes. Mm-hmm. What about you? I've gun to your head. Are you for it or against it?
As a policy, no. When I talk to a person who gets a benefit, I'm glad for them.
All right. So why are you unpersuaded? What about his arguments? Are you unpersuaded?
No, I'm not. Not
unpersuaded?
I'm not persuaded.
You're not
Sorry,
persuaded.
I'm not persuaded. You use
they're big words.
Okay, so unpersuaded is a weird word. No, it doesn't. It wouldn't change my mind. I can empathize with him because I really do feel bad. I do know that there are a lot of people that did not have either parents or people in their life that influenced them in a direction that was fiscally. Maybe they weren't. I'm not saying your parents. I'm just saying in general. Maybe they haven't made fiscally sound decisions in their life. I am benefiting of parents who have made financial. By the way, just a little small plug. One of the reasons why they have made sound financial decisions along the way is because they have tried to align their finances under a biblical model of how to operate your finances. Mm-hmm. Again, I just think a lot of people, when we as a church teach what the Bible says, when it says the borrower is slave to the lender, when it teaches about putting God first in the way He order your finances and He'll provide for you. When we say that stuff, it's not just, that's just what pastors say because they want you. No, it's like I actually believe that there's a blessing and a benefit when you operate your finances. Understand that it's all God's resource, and I'm here to manage it wisely. And so I have benefited from parents who have done that. They didn't encourage us, discourage us from going to school. Didn't say they'd pay for. My parents didn't pay for our college. When they got some money given to them because a family member passed away, they gave us a little bit of money. They helped a little bit if they could, but they didn't have the money to pay for our college. So to go to college, it was on our own to either get grants or to take loans or to work at a job. I worked full-time and went to school full-time. I went to work full-time and went to school part-time. I did it for years. Yeah. And I worked for places that would have tuition assistance that helped. We paid the difference. We didn't borrow. So I did all that. And I have encouraged my daughters to follow suit. My oldest She was looking at one local college. There was a private college, and she liked the campus. It was small, all this. And it was going to she very smart, scored very high. So after scholarship stuff would still probably cost about $20,000 to $22,000 a year for tuition. You include books. She was going to live at home. Like, we're like, it's 20 minutes away. You live at home? I basically said, I'm not going to borrow and I'm not going to pay for you to go have a fun college experience. You can go live in a really trashy dorm and you can do all that. I'm not going to pay for that when it's local. And I said, we wanted to help as parents, but we never felt like an obligation, partially because that didn't come down to us to help him. But I wanted to.
But what other of his arguments do you disagree with? So, I mean, we can come to, he would argue that this situation is unique and that the other generation is already turning away from this model that we've seen as unhealthy, and that people that can have this taken away in this unique moment in history of gouging will be freed up to buy homes and to help invest in the economy. Where do you disagree?
I disagree in the fact that in order to bring, I don't think that it's a good idea, both fiscally and just, I guess, morally. This is more of a personal morals, not like a spiritual morals, to take money from others and give it to them so that they can buy a house necessarily. I do. So like, it's, again, the money has to come from somewhere. So I guess if we want to just say that we don't care about debt nationally, and it's all fake and it doesn't matter, in that point, hey, great. So I think that's a short-term solution. Like, oh, okay, they don't have this, so now they're buying houses and they're putting more money into the economy. Like you said, it's not a ton, but they're putting money into the economy, so it's going to boost the whole thing. It's, rising tides lifts all ships and all this kind of stuff. But I think that's a short-term sight, for a long-term. What's this costing our nation? What's it costing future generations? What's it going to cost us economically down the road?
I would probably say, like I said before, what's the solution then? Like, do we raise the wage for people who are in this age bracket category so they can, or not age bracket, but who have this kind of debt? Do we raise their wages so they can be able to pay it back on time, or be able to afford a home while also staying on the repayment? Like, there's got to be a give and take somewhere, or maybe we're just okay with a generation is going to take a step. I'll say take a step backward. That's dramatic, but they're going to have to maybe wait longer for some of those
Debt definitely puts you behind the eight ball.
But you would argue it's their responsibility.
It is their responsibility, regardless. I can still feel really empathetic for even all the situations, the things that you talked about before. I really do. That's why I'm glad for you. But when you're talking about policy, when you're talking about governance, and you're talking about all these things, and I have a harder time with it as a policy. It's lipstick on a pig. We're not really fixing. I do agree we need solutions. I could probably land in the zone where you are, which is I'm all for offering help when there is a real clear path to fixing this situation. But if I'm thinking now, okay, so at this time and moment, you forgive all the people right now. It's good to be alive then, right? Or to be in that point, to receive that benefit. What happens to my daughter if she wants to go to school now? Right. So I just go, I think government's going to forgive her anyways. And so now, do I not take fiscal responsibility? Do I not, and I know they've tried to address this with the FAFSA and all kinds of stuff based on how much money. It actually can hurt you. Like, you can be on your own.
Yeah.
Like, where your parents say, I'm not helping you. But if your parents make it a decent amount of money,
it can hurt you.
Then you as a student are like, that's tough. There's not scholarships and grants that you can get because your parents. So even our government approaches it like, hey, mom and dad, you should help pay for their college. And as a parent, we have tried saving for it. We are trying to help where we can. That's what we've done. We've had, grandparents have offered to help. We'll help buy books. We'll help do this. And so, but what I was saying with my daughter is, I do think, parents, and I hope people listen to this, I think that whatever model you grew up in, you need to, if you're a parent now and you have kids, you need to be thinking really hard and understanding about this and teaching your kids. Because I took my daughter for a walk when I knew she wanted to go to that school that was going to be $22,000. and whatever. Or there was a state school that was 40-minute drive. It was probably about another 20-minute drive. And I said, okay, here's your options. If you want to go to that school that you really like, based on what they said they'd accept of your credits, because she did. Both of my daughters have done a full year of college under CCP and having the state help pay for it. So again, I'm not against taking advantage of whatever benefits the state, federal government, whatever offer. I told her, I said, you will do probably 4 years in this university because they may not take some of your credits and they may force you to do a 4-year program. Borrowing $20,000 a year, we can try to help, but we've saved only so much. We didn't have enough. We weren't making enough throughout those years to be able to pay for college, So we'll help. At the end of those 4 years, you may have about $80,000, $90,000 in debt. You could be a nurse. You're going to make this much money. You pay it back. Or I said, you can live at home. You could drive to this state university. There wasn't even the main branch. Everybody wants to go to the main branch. It was a branch university that had a nursing program 40 minutes away in Zanesville. Live at home. It cost $5,000 a year for tuition, not $20,000 a year for tuition. We will help you pay for it. We'll apply for scholarships. I think we can help you do this debt-free, and you'll be done in 3 years because she did her first year all through that same school.
Yes.
And you know what she said? Immediately she said, oh, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to have to talk her into it.
Unfortunately, I think you were probably the anomaly parent.
Well, I understand that, and that's why I said I have empathy, but she said, well, that's a no-brainer. And so guess what? She finished her bachelor's degree in 3 years with zero debt. Yeah. She also worked really hard in school. She ended up getting a huge scholarship that paid for the first 2 of the 3 years outright, and then it worked out in the end. And so, it worked out really well, but it was because, as a parent, and this is I coached her in that direction. You know what? She's married. She's 21 years old. Her and her husband have a house. They're already, they're beginning in that process where you can begin to build wealth and all that. And they haven't been put behind the 8 ball because of crushing debt. They don't have any debt. They don't have credit card debts. They have the one car that they bought. They're doing on 0%.
Yeah.
I mean, I told her I don't even think I'd put money down on it if I were you. Keep your cash in the bank, your emergency fund, your reserves, because it's 0%. They don't do that anymore. Yeah. She got a car at 0%. So it's yes, I think it's important to be coaching people to make wise financial decisions at a young age. And unfortunately, a lot of people haven't had it. And so I empathize with it. And if there is a way the government does it, I'm just sitting here telling you, take advantage, apply for it. I think we need to address universities and higher education. We do need to address wages. That's a whole nother conversation because forcing wage for, small businesses and other things are one of the things that can put people out of business, and that affects creating opportunity for people. And so I think there's a lot that can be debated. But if you do look at school tuition has outpaced inflation by a massive amount. Yeah. And I think we're in a recession right now. We're also noticing that inflation and other things are causing the cost of living to go way up, and our income is not necessarily in general keeping up with that, especially at the rate it's going now. And so there's a breaking point. Yeah. And we're all going to feel it. And so
and it's hard to hear that when you hear about companies having record fall.
They're making record profits.
Record profits.
Right now. There's companies making record profits right now.
And so it's like, what's going on here?
And so, I hope that we're taxing companies appropriately. Yes. I'm not, again, this goes into a whole conversation we could probably have on, I'm not into putting a heavier burden on organizations than we should. I want to promote that, but we also know that a lot of tax people and lawyers are really good at finding loopholes so they don't have to pay any tax on their profits, and it's left on the backs of people who file their taxes like me and you and we don't have loopholes or other things, and we're paying taxes.
And we have a shrinking middle class that has a broken tax code.
Yeah. There's a lot. It is. These are all massive problems to deal with, and we're way over our pay grade. Let's just be honest. We're just blabbering about.
Well, it's good to have a conversation, and I like the fact that we have varying different opinions at this table even. Yeah. So probably saying wherever you're watching, and so I don't know. Write in, let us know. You were one.
Here it goes. Here we go. You were wanting to weigh.
All right. We will see you next week.
What is that? You're just gonna.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey, I want to just say one last thing. Is that time? One last thing for the people that will listen to this that will say something about a spiritual aspect of this.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to make a quick observation.
Yeah.
I've heard this one. That's why I want to say it. In the Bible, aren't we the beneficiary of forgiveness?
We are.
And so shouldn't we be okay about forgiveness? People getting their loans forgiven, their debt forgiven.
Yeah.
Because of what Jesus did, our debt was forgiven.
Yes.
And to that point, I would just say, I think it's really a weird thing to take a spiritual truth and then cross it over to an economic principle. But
I agree.
let me just say that. I just know that I've heard these are talking points, okay? And
I cringe.
I know. And I would say that forgiveness and transfer and language, all I know is that when Jesus died for us, it didn't absolve all of the sins. They were transferred onto him.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Someone still had to pay for it.
Yeah.
I've heard this argument, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not even a good theological argument where it's like,
Right.
wait a minute, he just forgave all your debt.
Right.
No,
No.
it just means that he bore our debt, the scripture says. So it was transferred to him.
Right.
He experienced the pain of that and the weight of that on the cross and the wrath of God. So again, I don't know where to get all that theologically, but I've just heard that comment made kind of flippantly, and I'm like, I just don't think that's a great. We're talking about economic policies, government, national. These,
Two different things.
Let's not cross this over. I just feel like sometimes
That
we like to
is
throw
true. But you know,
arguments.
in the parable where Jesus talked about forgiveness, and there's the king, and then there was the wicked servant who was forgiven, but then he found a servant who owed him just a little bit of money and choked him and didn't release the debt. I mean, that debt wasn't transferred; it was just released.
But the one guy had his debt forgiven first.
Yes.
And he didn't do it on there. Again, it's a
just
spiritual principle that I know you bring up that has no application here whatsoever. And I just think if you're a person of faith, be cautious of getting into these conversations that theologically this isn't an accurate way to argue with other people. So it's like, if you come from a liberal perspective on this, I'm going to argue with you spiritually. Like, don't do that. There's just you sound incompetent.
Yeah, don't just put
Have a
Christian Stanfield, Jesus paid it all, and say, hey, that's, which by the way,
He didn't pay it.
did you see that one of the new
Bill is paid.
upgrades they're going to have on, I think it's Instagram is like a throwback to MySpace, like an intro song, where you add music to when somebody, I think
Goes to your
it clicks
profile?
on your profile, there's a song playing.
Oh, God.
I'm thinking about Zanga and MySpace and all the things, but
Anyways,
but Jesus paid it all, so the government should too.
If people have thoughts on this, and they might, they can let us know.
All right. Until next week, write us in and give us your thoughts. Podcast@thex.church and just leave an incredible review.
5-star review.
5 stars. Gold stars.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.